Well, good morning, everyone. Again, I'm so excited to have you here with us on our live stream. And we are on both Facebook and YouTube. How exciting is that? And so it's great because I see people reacting and responding on both. So, again, I'm so excited that we have this opportunity to be able to utilize that. I want to apologize this morning for anyone that was confused with the other live stream that we started. Uh, it was a mistake in the setup, but I'll get it figured out for next week. But hey, we're live, we're at work, it's happening now. So thank you all for joining us, and I'm so glad that you are here with us for this live stream. And I just wanted to start off with a quick, fun question, and that is, if you haven't put gas in your car for at least 3 weeks, put a smiley face on the screen. So again, if you have not put gas in your car for at least 3 weeks, put a smiley face on the screen. Again, maybe that's at least one of the good things from COVID-19 is we can save money on gas. But with that, let me go ahead and get started with things that are going on. And look at that. We can see some happy faces that are popping up there. You know, how cool is that? But there's another happy face. Um, but with that, we'll go ahead and we will jump in and get started. First of all, for those of you that want to be able to follow along with the message electronically, then what you can do is hold your phone up to the QR code there. It'll give you a link, and then you can go, and that way you can be able to follow along with the electronic bulletin through the Bible app. And it's a great tool for you to be able to have to follow along with the message as well. I just want to let you know on May the 13th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., we have our mobile food bank that's coming up. Again, we will still be practicing safe social distancing for that. And we would love to have as many people as we can to serve. So if you are in need of food, please come out that week. You don't have to necessarily worry about bringing bags or anything like that, but bring something that you can carry stuff away in. If you can have something that can roll, preferably, because we'll be giving away boxes of a box of food. We'll also be giving away maybe a meat item and a produce item. So if you can have something that you can roll away with, that would be great. Then the other thing with that, if you want to volunteer for that, the only thing that we ask is that if you're in that age bracket where you may be at risk, and we ask for you not to come out and volunteer that day, but just pray for us. But other than that, if you want to come out and volunteer, we would love to have you be a part of that. We probably need about maybe 8 volunteers to come out and to be a part of it, because this new system, we don't need a ton of people anymore. But again, it's a great way for us to be able to make a difference in the community as well. Next week, after the service, we're going to do a Zoom hangout. I don't know about you, but one of the things I do miss is those Sunday mornings where we get together, we're eating donuts together, we're hanging out and just kind of catching up with life. And so we're going to do that again next week. And so there's a meeting ID there. So if you want to join us after the service, probably be about 11:30 or so, you can jump in and be able to say hello to everyone and kind of reconnect with everyone as well. And then there's the other thing that I want to encourage you to do, and that is to make a commitment to love your neighbor. There's no better time than this. And so what we're going to have is and I'll actually show a copy of this, or show a picture of this later. But what we're going to have is door hangers that you could use, that you could actually take, and all you got to do is put your information on it, like maybe your phone number or something like that. And you can hang it on your neighbor's doors. And basically all it's saying is, if you are in need of help, I'm here. You know, one of the commandments that the Bible gives us is Jesus was asked, what are the 2 greatest commandments? And he said this: love God. And the second is love your neighbor. And so this is an opportunity for us. This is an unprecedented moment for us to be able to show love to our neighbors like never before. So this is just a way to say, hey, if you need help, I am available. And I also wanted to do this too. Each week, I encourage us to say thanks to people that are on the front lines, in the grocery stores, in the medical industry, doing care, people that are taking risks, people that are doing the essential jobs. Here's what I want to ask you to do. this week as well, is if you know of someone, maybe go out and buy them a gift card to, and maybe if you have their email address, you can send it to them electronically. But maybe get them a gift card and drop it in their mailbox or something like that, just to be able to say, you know what, I appreciate you, and I know the risk that you're taking, and I just wanted to share right now that I'm so appreciative. Thank you so much. And it's just a little thing that we can do to be able to show them that we're so appreciative, like I said, of the risk that they are taking. This next announcement is for those that call Encounter their home. And so, with that, if you want to continue to financially support us, that way we could do things like the mobile food bank. And again, last month, we gave 121 meals away for families. So we served 121 families in our community, which is awesome. And then, for those of you that may not know, we served another 20 families after that. So over the last month, we have served 141 families meals. So and that's thanks to you for your giving and allowing us to be able to support the community and make a difference. And so there's several ways that you can give. And so here's one is you can just email, you can send it through mail, Encounter Community Church, and then that's our address there. The other way is you can do it online. So if you can head over to our website, encountercommunity.church, click the link that says online giving. You can give through that. And you can either do it a one-time gift, or if you want to set something up where you can give regularly, it gives you a breakdown for you to be able to do that. And then the other way is through texting. And so that's the phone number there. If you text in 424-373-3583. And then what you'll do is, if this is your first time texting to that number, so what you'll do is you put in the amount that you want to give. And then if that's your first time, then it'll have you go through a setup process just to make sure, and that's to make sure you get credit, for your taxes and everything like that as well. And so with that, again, I am so excited about this morning and for this opportunity for us to be able to come together. Again, Ariel is going to lead us in a moment of worship. Again, some of you may be watching. You may be unfamiliar with this music. Totally understand that. But the words will be on the screen. And what you'll see is after a while, after a few stanzas and choruses, you'll get used to it, and you can be able to sing along with it as well. But before we do that, let me open this up in prayer. Father, I just thank you. I thank you for this time. I thank you for this moment. I thank you for this opportunity for us to be able to come together. And I pray that for those who are here this morning, that they're able to walk away uplifted. They're able to walk away encouraged, knowing, God, that you love them, knowing that you care for them. And Father, I know that there may be some people who are watching today because they've seen the topic that we're going to talk about. I'm out. When you've lost faith in the faith. And so, Father, for those who are here that are struggling with this whole idea of God, a whole idea of faith, thank you so much that they are here. And I pray that today will be a day where they will be uplifted again and encouraged, and maybe see you in a new light. In all these things we ask in your name. Amen.
Verse 1, who breaks? Who breaks the power of sin and darkness?
Thank you so much, Ariel. Again, I just want to let you guys know just how much I just appreciate Ariel and everything that she does. Also, just wanted to encourage you just to be praying for her because of the fact that, just be praying for her because of the fact that she had some really cool musical opportunities this week, and hopefully it opens up great doors for her and for her music. And we're just so blessed to have her as a part of the Encounter team. I had mentioned that I was going to show you guys the door hangers. This is the door hanger here, so you can kind of see what it looks like. And so again, it says neighbors helping neighbors. And then what you do is you can put your personal information here. And then here's what's really great. It says for assistance, prayer, or just to talk. I mean, what a great tool for that. And then here's what it says on the back, which I love. It says neighbor to neighbor. Being alone is hard. We are created for community, not confinement. In times of crisis, it's helpful to know that you're not alone. I want you to know that I am your neighbor, and I'm here to help, and I'm ready to help. I provided my contact information on the front side of this card. Please reach out to me if there's something I can do or if you need someone to talk to. Love that. And it says, we don't have to do all of it alone. We were never meant to. It's a quote by Brene Brown. So we will have these. So what you can do is you can head over to our office. And when you come into the courtyard, on the outside of our office door, there is an air conditioner. On that air conditioner will be these inside of a box. Now, we have 500 of these because we got them for a really, 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 really good deal. I would love to see all of these disappear. So please come by, grab them, pass them out to your neighbors, and show your neighbors that you love them. Now, last week, we started a brand new series called I'm Out. I'm Out. And the idea is, or the subtitle for that is When You've Lost Faith in the Faith. And the idea is how do we reconcile just some of the challenges that we have when it comes to faith and being able to move beyond some of those challenges? And with that, if you missed last week, you can go back on our website. You can watch the replay of the live stream. Again, that is encountercommunity.church. So you can go there. You can watch the replay there. Also, on our podcast, I talked about it as well. So you can go back on that page. There's a link that says podcast. You can go back and you can listen to it from last week as well. But with that, I think there are some of us who have become, should I say, uncomfortable with church, maybe even disappointed with church, maybe even turned off with church. And so the result of that is that we've left church. But now we find ourselves in this position because I don't really consider myself an atheist, and I don't really consider myself an agnostic, because the idea of being agnostic is I know there's something that's out there, I just can't define what it is. In your heart, you kind of have an idea of who God is, but you find yourself stuck, and now you're wrestling with this, and what are the implications, and what does this all mean? And I just want to tell you this, that if you are someone who is wrestling or who's struggling, I understand, and I get it. And there's no judgment there. Matter of fact, I think it's healthy for us to struggle and for us to wrestle and try to figure out this faith thing and how it all works and what it all means. And some of you may have left church because you had someone tell you you're not supposed to wrestle. You're not supposed to struggle. And again, that's just theological baloney. We all go through those moments of wrestle. It's a part of the human experience. So I just want to let you know that it's okay to wrestle. Now, I've read quite a few deconversion stories. I've also had some conversations with people. And here is kind of the general scene that I've seen people have when it comes to their deconversion experience is maybe they grew up in a religious experience. They grew up going to church. And maybe at church, they had an encounter with Jesus in some way, or at least an experience. Maybe they were in Sunday school. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with Sunday school, because you don't see them in a lot of churches now, imagine this. Imagine you have your church service, and before you have your church service, you have an opportunity for everybody to get together. Then they all break up into classes. They learn something about God. then they come together, they sum that up, and then about maybe 15, 20 minutes later, they start a church service, a worship service. So a lot of people made a commitment to Jesus Christ when they were kids in Sunday school. Or maybe they went to a summer camp experience that exposed them to the Bible and God and who he is, whether it be in elementary school or whether it be in high school or middle school. But they made a commitment to Jesus. You made a commitment to Jesus. And then what happens is you graduated from high school and you went to college. And now you're exposed to people who are completely different. And the thing that you find really interesting is for some of you, all your life, you've been told those people are bad people, they're bad people, they're bad people. But then you meet them and they're not so bad. They're not so bad. So it causes you to start to wonder about some of the messages that you heard about your faith. And then not only that, what happens is you take a philosophy class. And in a philosophy class, the teacher raises some really great questions. And then maybe you take a biology class or a chemistry class or some other kind of science class. And it calls into question some of the things that you've learned. So then you go home and you decide, you know what, I'm going to talk to my church about it. I'm going to talk to my pastor about it because I have some real questions here. And so you start to ask your pastor these questions. Yet, here's what happens, is when you start to ask these questions, you receive faith answers to fact-based questions. You receive faith answers to fact-based questions. And here's what I mean by that is, what I mean by that is simply, what happens is you received an answer that was like, well, just believe. Just have faith. You shouldn't have these doubts. Just believe in Jesus. And you're like, I do believe in Jesus, but I have these legitimate questions. And the longer these questions go unanswered, one day you come to the conclusion, well, maybe I don't believe anymore. And so you stop going to church. You stop doing the religious thing because you just hit that point. I don't believe anymore. Other deconversion experiences go like this. Well, maybe you grew up going to church and you did the whole thing. You had the conversion experience as a kid, but then you have what I would call a faith-crushing experience. And now that causes everything to come into question once again when it comes to your belief in God. Because there are certain things that you prayed for and it just didn't work out. And so now what happens is you come to a different conclusion. It's not that you come to a conclusion that you don't believe, but you come to a conclusion that you can't believe. Like, based upon my disappointment, I can't muster up enough faith to believe anymore. And you find yourself possibly walking away from the faith, or maybe you do walk away. I saw a quote as I was preparing for this message that I thought was great. It's from a woman named Karen Armstrong. She wrote a book called The Case for God. And here's what she said. She said, many of us have been left stranded with an incoherent concept of God. We learned about God about the same time as we were told about Santa Claus. But while our understanding of the Santa Claus phenomenon evolved and matured, our theology remained somewhat infantile. Not surprisingly, when we attained intellectual maturity, many of us rejected the God we had inherited and denied he existed. And denied he existed. Was that your experience? There was this one time that Jesus Christ was hanging out and there were these guys that were around him and they started just firing questions at him. And there was one question that he was asked about the future, about relationships, and they were just grilling him. And he said a response that I thought was really, really interesting. He said this in Matthew chapter 22, verse 29. He said, Jesus replied, your mistake is that you don't know the scriptures and you don't know the power of God. You know, literally what he's saying, and he would say this quite a bit to those guys, is you really don't know who God is. You have no concept of who he truly is. And they were teaching people based upon their lack of a concept of God. Years ago, you know, we were in this place where our previous dog, Bennett, had passed away. And we'd gone about a year without a dog. And we heard about this program called Bullies. Well, my wife, I should say, heard about this program called Bullies and Buddies. And basically, what they do is they rescue dogs, and they don't have like a kennel. They don't have anything like that to be able to keep the dogs. And so, what they ask families to do is they ask families to foster the dogs, and then every once in a while they would have an adoption event. So those families would bring the dogs to the adoption event, and then families would adopt them there. And so Heidi heard about this, and so she asked us to consider maybe fostering the dogs and maybe helping out in this way. Now, realize it's called Bullies and Buddies. And you know why it's called Bullies and Buddies? It's because the main breed that they had were pit bulls. Now, I've heard all the pit bull stories. Haven't you? I've heard all the pit bull stories. And haven't you noticed this? Whenever you watch Judge Judy or the People's Court, whenever there is a dog attack experience, it's always what? Pits, right? It's always pit bulls. And so we were concerned, we had kids, and we were just concerned about this breed and bringing it into our home. But my wife went ahead and said, "Well, hey, let's try it," because her love for dogs, superseded just the caution kind of thing. Because my wife will stop traffic to save a dog. I mean, she just loves dogs that much. And so with that, which I think is really beautiful. But with that, we made sure that we talked to Bullies and Buddies, and we said to them, like, hey, we need to make sure that we have a dog that is okay with kids. And so we ended up fostering two of the dogs. Our friends adopted one of the dogs, which was really cool. And then we ended up with another dog. And let me just show you this face here. Sorry, it should be. Give me 1 second. I put it on earlier, and for some reason, it's not there. So give me one. Sorry, I apologize for this. But she's a beautiful. Oh, here she is. There we go. Sorry about that. So beautiful. Look at that face. Look at the face of that dog. She blows all pit bull things out of the water. All of the misgivings about the pit bulls, she blows it out of the water. She's the sweetest dog. There is not a vicious bone in her body. Not a vicious bone in her body. And so with that, one of the things that we started doing is we started doing research and everything, and we found out that pit bulls were actually nanny dogs. That's what they originally started out as. So all of those misgivings that we heard about pit bulls were just wrong. We're just wrong. And so with that in mind, what we started to do is we went ahead and we fostered this dog, and now she's our dog, and we've had Sugar for many, many years. But we probably wouldn't have done it before because of all the misgivings that we heard if we had not had the Sugar experience. And I want to say this, that is it possible that maybe the God that you've learned about, maybe the God that you have been talked to about, maybe it's possible that the God that you walked away from never existed, and it was all based upon misgivings and misrepresentations about God and who he is. So here's what we're going to do, is we're going to talk about the top misconceptions about God in a moment. But here's what happens is I've noticed when it comes to deconversion stories, there's usually two types. One is people walk away because I learned about this God from other people, but it's not, what they're saying is not true. So those people just walk away based on what they heard. The other thing is people have walked away because they've been taught, well, this is what the Bible says, and the Bible says so. So here's what we're going to do. This week is we're going to camp out on what people say. Next week, we're going to camp out on the Bible says so. We'll be hitting, both of those. But with that, we're going to jump through. And I want you to keep in mind what you hear and see, are these any of the gods that you've been taught about? So here's the first one, is what I would call the bodyguard God. The bodyguard God. So the bodyguard God basically makes sure that no bad things happen to good people. Like He is there to protect you, to watch over you. No bad things happen to good people. And then again, going back to like the Sunday school experience, you heard about David and Goliath. You heard about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and God rescuing him. You heard about Daniel being in the lion's den and God closing the mouths of the lions. So you heard all of those stories, and now you're an adult and you're finding that it maybe doesn't match up. Especially right now because of COVID-19, right? Bad things don't happen to good people. So why are so many people getting COVID-19? And some of those people even being believers. How is that possible? And so with that, I think what happens is if you've been taught that God, here's what they have not considered. There's an entire book in the Bible called Job. You know what basically Job is all about? Job is all about a guy who's a good guy who had some horrible things happen to him. Matter of fact, he was so frustrated by those horrible things. One of the questions he had for God is, God, I am someone who follows you, and this thing that's happening to me is horrible, yet I look at people who could care less about you, and they're having a great time with their lives. So, God, why is that? Why is that? I can also tell you this as well. If the bodyguard God was what was presented to people when Christianity first started, it never would have survived. Because back then, the problem was persecution. And so if you made a commitment to Jesus, it was very possible that you could lose your life. And so if you were taught this concept that if you believe in God and all good things are going to happen to you, it never would have flown. It never would have made it out of the first century. And here's the biggest thing. Do you know that Christianity started with a tragedy? It started with a tragedy. It started with the sacrifice of Christ giving his life. It started with the crucifixion experience. So we're talking about something horrible happening to someone perfect. So if something horrible can happen to him, then that might mean bad things can happen to us. So the bodyguard God isn't true. Maybe you were taught about this. The on-demand God. You know what on-demand is, right? Basically at the beck and call of the faithful. But you know what on-demand is, right? I can go and I can click and I can watch whatever it is that I want to. I can listen to what it is. Basically, it is on demand for me and for my needs. And you were taught that God is on demand. He's ready to answer exactly all of your prayers. And if you have enough faith that everything in your life is going to work out, it's all going to work out. And so you ask God for an answer, and you receive nothing. You ask God for a sign, and you saw nothing. You ask God for a miracle, and you received nothing. So based on that, you thought, I'm done. I'm done. And let me tell you, I am so glad that God doesn't answer every prayer the way that I want him to. I am so glad. Because if he had, I would not have the incredible woman that I have in my life right now. So I am so glad that God does not answer all of our prayers the way that we want him to. Here's another one. Best friend God. Best friend God. His presence is always felt. He's my best friend. He's my homie. He's right there. God, I know that you are always here. And then what happens is we'll use verses like this. Psalm 139, 7 through 8. I can never escape from your spirit. I can never get away from your presence. If I go to heaven, you are there. If I go down to the grave, you are there. I should always feel your presence. I came across a letter that Mother Teresa had written, and it says this: Jesus has a very special love for you. But as for me, the silence and the emptiness is so great that I look and I do not see, listen and I do not hear. The tongue moves in prayer but does not speak. I want you to pray for me that I let him have a free hand. And so there may be this challenge where you go through life and you really want to feel the presence of God and you don't. And as a matter of fact, what adds to it is you might hear something like this, that if you don't feel God's presence, it's not that he moved, right? Which brings us to the next God that many of us were raised with, and that is the guilt God. The guilt God controls you by fear and guilt, right? Why do I go to church? Because I feel guilty. Why do I read the Bible? Because I feel guilty. Why do I pray? Because I feel guilty. Why do I help those in need? Because I feel guilty. Guilt, 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 guilt. And you may feel like God may love me, but boy, he sure does not like me. And if it's fun, the answer is what? No. Right? We are done. And have you noticed this? That maybe you had grown up in this oppressive, this guilt regime of guilting you to follow God, and now you leave that. Like, I'm out. You move out, you're done. You move out from that. But yet, for some reason, that old guilt voice still speaks and still talks to you. And we're so driven by our guilt. There's a funny story I have to tell you that I was at a church that I used to be a part of. It had a kitchen in it, and people would use the kitchen all the time. And unfortunately, people wouldn't always clean up after themselves. And there was this one guy that would take it upon himself to keep the kitchen clean. And I will tell you this: if you use the kitchen at church, clean up after yourself. But he took it upon himself to do this. And one day he just got frustrated, and he put a sign on the door, or a sign on it on the wall, and it said, "Clean up after yourself. God is watching you." Right? That's guilt. That's guilt. The other God that you may have heard about is what I would call the anti-science God. This goes back to what we were talking about before, right? Where you have real fact questions, but you got faith-based answers. And so you have to choose between facts and God. The two can't peacefully coexist. And you see this divide happening more and more now, where either you're a Christian and you believe, or you're a scientist and you believe, but there can't be a commingling. It can't happen both ways. Richard Dawkins, the atheist, he put it this way. He said, one of the truly bad effects of religion is that it teaches that it is a virtue to be satisfied with not understanding. That it is satisfied with not understanding. I remember once I was at El Camino. I used to do campus ministry there. And I had this guy walk up to our table, and he said, "Hey, I have a question to ask you. If I gave you a good argument with some facts, would you accept the facts, or would you hold on to your faith?" And my response to him was, "Bro, you have a terrible definition of faith." And we walked through what faith means. Because is it possible for science and faith to commingle? Absolutely. And I'll give you an example. If you start feeling COVID-19 symptoms, you start getting headaches, you start coughing, let me tell you what, you're not coming to church. And if you do, let me know, because I ain't going to be here. Right? No, you know what you do? You call your friends, you say, "Pray for me. I'm going to what? The scientist, called a doctor." Right? And what if the doctor came back to you and the doctor said, "Well, I've got your testing, and I think God's trying to teach you something." You'd be like, "Well, thanks, doc, but what's the diagnosis?" Right? So with that, is it possible? Is it possible? Because I think sometimes, depending on what your church experience might be, it may feel like you're taught, check your brain at the door, because you can't have science and God. And there's no greater sadness than that, because it makes it really clear in Scripture that God is our creator. And if he is our creator, you know what's involved? Science. Science. So I think it's possible for us to have a mixture. We don't have to choose, but sometimes you feel like you have to, and ignore the facts that you see, or ignore the questions that you have. And then the final God that I've seen us be raised with is it must be God, God. It must be God, God. So what is that God? This is the God, this is the explanation. When we don't have something that makes sense, we say it's God. We say it's God. Now, I know with this, I have to tread very carefully, because I want to make sure that I do believe that God is a powerful God. I do believe that God does miracles. But I think what's happened in the past is there have been times that we've assigned something to God, and now we see, based on scientific advancement, that maybe it was just the work of your white blood cells, right? And so now what happens is it causes us to doubt. Let me tell you, the unexplained doesn't necessarily mean God's involved. The unexplained just means that there's something that we're ignorant about, or that we don't completely understand, or that we don't completely know. But I just want to let you know that, let's say everything is explained. Let's say we get to a point where everything is explained and everything is explainable. That does not deny the fact there's a God and that he exists. But I think it's very dangerous to place your faith on automatically assigning the unexplained to the work of God. I think it's very dangerous to your faith. And as a matter of fact, for many of you, that's been your experience. And for many of you, it has undermined your faith. So let me ask you this question. The God that you walked away from, was he one of these? Was he one of these? So again, just to a quick reminder, we had the bodyguard God, we had the on-demand God, we had the best friend God, we had the guilt God, we had the anti-science God, and we had the it must be God God. Okay, are there any of those that you've connected with? I would love for you to do me a favor. Right now, Ariel is going to lead us in another song called "You Keep Hope Alive." And as she's singing that song, I want you to think about your experience. And if you could do me a favor, if you have been led to believe in one of these gods, and I'll be honest, I've made the mistake of teaching one of these gods in the past, if not more. And it's with maturity that I've grown, that I've learned, and that my picture of God has become more full. Um, but I get why people would wrestle. So if you could do me a favor, as Ariel is singing, just kind of think about your life and think about your experiences. And if it's because of one of these gods has walked away, you walked away, can you put that on the screen for me? Just type it in the chat area. And then I'll be honest with you. Afterwards, I'm going to talk about it just a little bit more, just to kind of wrap this up, um, so we can be done for the day. But what I would love to do is, for those that are at home that are watching this on their television that don't have the opportunity to chat, they can't see what's being posted. So for some of them, I might post them on the screen for them to be able to see, what they are. So I just want to let you be aware that I'm going to do that. But if you could do that, if you could just be honest and just tell your story, is this one of the gods that you believed in?
Verse 1. Taste of your darkest, but your light is greater. You light awake, God, you light awake. When evil is rising, you're rising higher, with power to save, with power to save. You keep hope alive. You keep hope alive. From the beginning to end, your word never fails. You keep hope alive, because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. Death had a stronghold. Death had a stronghold, but your life was stronger. Rose from the grave, rose up from the grave. When evil is rising, you're rising higher, with power to this moment, my hope. For tomorrow, there's hope. In the morning, hope. In the evening, hope. Because you're living, hope. Because you're breathing, there's hope. In the breaking, hope. In the sorrow, hope. For this moment, my hope. Let's do that again. There's hope. There's hope. In the morning, hope. In the evening, hope. Because you're living, hope. Because you're breathing, there's hope. In the breaking, hope. In the sorrow, hope. For this moment, my hope. For tomorrow, you keep hope alive. You keep hope alive. From the beginning to end, your word never fails. You keep hope alive. Because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive. Let's do that chorus one last time. You keep hope alive. You keep hope alive. From the beginning to end, your word never fails. You keep hope alive. Because you are alive. Jesus, you are alive.
Thanks again, Ariel. I appreciate your heart. And I want to take this time out to say thank you for those that answered the question. And I also want to let you know this. If you didn't, no judgment there. If you were uncomfortable putting it on the screen for everyone to see, no judgment there. Totally understand. But thank you for being a part of the message. And I just wanted to just post a couple. This is something that was for my wife. It says, for me, it was on demand, God. Then he didn't answer my prayer. And I know what faith it really is. I have a prayer that I pray for 10 years. It still goes unanswered. And that is okay. I've grown so much in my faith because of it. We had someone else, Katrina, said, guilt God. You know, that I've had that. And Chris said, bodyguard God and on-demand God. I'll be honest, my two were bodyguard God and on-demand God. And I could tell you, Jessica has said it was guilt and fear. So thank you guys so much for your candidness and for your honesty. I just want to let you know that these are the reasons why people walk away from God. Because again, we're not given a whole picture of him. And I just want to ask you, if you walked away from God, is it possible that the God that you walked away from never existed? Or maybe you were never given a balanced view or perspective of God and who he is. I just want to encourage you to stick out the series with us. And I pray that maybe this morning, as I was going through some of them, maybe you realize, like, wow, I'm not alone in this. I'm not alone in what I feel. I'm not alone in my struggle. And I want you to know that you're not alone. So with that, if you would love for me to be able to pray for you, there are two ways that you could do that. The first one is through our email address. So you could email me there. And then what will happen is I'll receive that, and I would love the opportunity to be able to pray for you. If you would like for me to pray for you, but not necessarily give me your personal information, then if you hit on your phone, if you text at signupecc to 81010, what will happen is then you can interact with me, with one another, and it's through what's called the Remind app. It's what teachers use to interact with their students as well as with their parents. And the great thing about that is we never receive your personal information. The only thing that we might get is your name, but that's it. So if you want to, you could sign up through that, and then Through that, you can send me prayer requests, and I would love the opportunity to be able to pray for you and interact with you. Um, and my prayer is that this COVID-19 thing will be done soon. And then afterwards, maybe you and I can get together, have a cup of coffee, and talk about life. I want to make it really clear to you that the goal for this series is not to argue, it's not to debate, it's not healthy anyway. But I would love for it to open up a conversation, for it to be a discussion, and for us to maybe, as we walk away, we might even agree to disagree. But you will know that I honor you, that I respect you, that I care about you. And I would love the opportunity to just be able to encourage you. The last thing that I wanted to encourage everyone to do is subscribe. Or if you are on Facebook, like our page, because whenever we post anything new, then what will happen is you'll get notified of that. We do vlogs, we do podcasts, we do all of those things. And so, whenever we post anything new, you'll get notified of those. So follow us on Facebook or like us on Facebook, and then subscribe if you're watching on our YouTube channel. Again, thank you so much for spending your Sunday morning with us. I am so blessed to have you with us. And don't miss next week as we dig into the Bible says so. We'll dig into that next week. So we'll see you then.